The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday night in November. Not the gentle kind that makes everything look pretty, but the cold, nasty type that soaks right through your jacket and makes your bones ache. Linda Hayes pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders as she walked down Maple Street, her sneakers making wet squishing sounds with every step. She was exhausted, the kind of tired that makes your whole body feel heavy like you're carrying invisible weights on your shoulders. She'd just finished her shift at the diner, standing on her feet for 8 straight hours, refilling coffee cups and forcing smiles at customers who sometimes left good tips and sometimes left nothing at all. Tomorrow she'd be back there at 6 in the morning to do it all over again. Linda was thinking about her daughter as she walked. Little Amy was home with Mrs. Chen from next door, probably already asleep in her bed. Amy was 7 years old, with her father's dark curly hair and a gap between her front teeth that made Linda's heart melt every time she smiled. That gap would probably need braces someday, Linda thought, and the worry twisted in her stomach. She could barely afford to keep the lights on. How would she ever pay for braces? The library came into view up ahead, its windows dark and empty. The building always looked sad at night, Linda thought, like a person with no one to talk to. She was about to walk past it when something caught her eye. There was someone sitting on the bench out front, an old man hunched over against the rain, completely soaked. Linda's first instinct was to keep walking. She'd lived in the city long enough to know that getting involved with strangers could mean trouble. Plus, she was tired and wet, and just wanted to get home. But something made her stop. Maybe it was the way the old man was sitting so still, not even trying to find shelter. Maybe it was because she knew what it felt like to have nowhere to go. She walked closer, her footsteps cautious. The man looked up as she approached, and even in the dim streetlight, she could see his face clearly. He had to be in his 70s, at least with silver hair plastered to his head from the rain and deep lines around his eyes. But those eyes, they were gentle somehow. Kind. "Excuse me," Linda said, her voice uncertain. "Are you okay?" The old man smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "I'm all right, dear. Just waiting for the next bus. Seems I missed the last one." Linda glanced at the bus stop sign a few feet away. She knew the schedule by heart since she took the bus to work most days. "Sir, the last bus came through an hour ago. There won't be another one until morning." The old man nodded slowly, like this wasn't news to him. "Well then, I suppose I'll wait until morning." "You can't stay out here all night," Linda heard herself saying. "It's freezing, you'll get sick." "I've survived worse," the old man said with a small chuckle. "Don't worry about me. You should get yourself home before you catch a cold, too." Linda should have said okay and walked away. She should have minded her own business like she always told Amy to do. But instead, she found herself saying, "I live just 2 blocks from here. It's not much, but you could sleep on our couch, just for tonight until you can catch that morning bus." The old man's eyes widened slightly. "That's very kind of you, but I couldn't impose." "It's no imposition," Linda said, though a small voice in her head was screaming at her that she was being crazy. She was inviting a complete stranger into her home where her daughter was sleeping. What kind of mother did that? But looking at this old man, shivering and soaked through, she couldn't just walk away. "Come on, you'll freeze to death out here." The old man stood up slowly, his movements stiff like his joints hurt. "Well, if you're sure. My name is Walter, by the way. I'm Linda." She didn't offer her last name, and he didn't ask. They walked the 2 blocks in silence, the rain still coming down steadily. Linda's mind was racing. What would Mrs. Chen think? What would Amy think when she woke up and found a stranger in their apartment? Was she making a huge mistake? Her apartment building was old, the kind with peeling paint and a front door that didn't quite close all the way. She led Walter up 3 flights of stairs, apologizing for the elevator being broken again. He didn't complain, just followed behind her patiently. The apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room that was barely big, enough for their old couch and the television Amy loved to watch cartoons on. Linda felt embarrassed suddenly, seeing it through a stranger's eyes. The furniture was secondhand. There was a water stain on the ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix, and she'd had to put cardboard in the window where the glass had cracked last winter. "It's not much," she said quietly, "but it's warm." "It's perfect," Walter said, and something in his voice made her think he really meant it. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway of Amy's bedroom, her eyes going wide when she saw Walter. Linda quickly explained the situation, and Mrs. Chen, bless her heart, just nodded and gathered her things. "You have a good heart, Linda," she whispered on her way out. "But be careful." After Mrs. Chen left, Linda showed Walter where the bathroom was and brought him a towel and one of the oversized t-shirts she slept in. It would be huge on her but might fit him okay. While he changed and dried off, she checked on Amy, who was fast asleep, her arms wrapped around the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was a baby. When Walter came back out, looking more comfortable in dry clothes, Linda made him a cup of tea. It was the cheap kind from the dollar store, but it was hot, and that was what mattered. They sat at her small kitchen table, and she found herself telling him things she hadn't planned to share. About how Amy's father had left when she was just a baby. About working 2 jobs and still never having enough money. About the eviction notice she'd gotten last week, giving her 30 days to come up with 2 months' back rent. Walter listened without interrupting, his hands wrapped around the warm mug of tea. When she finished talking, he didn't offer advice or tell her everything would be okay. He just said, "You're doing a good job. Your daughter is lucky to have you." Those simple words made Linda's eyes sting with tears she was too tired to hold back. She wiped at her face quickly, embarrassed. "Sorry, it's been a long day." "Don't apologize," Walter said gently. "We all need someone to listen sometimes." She set him up on the couch with the extra blanket they kept in the closet and a pillow that had seen better days. "I'm sorry it's not more comfortable," she said. "It's wonderful," Walter assured her. "Thank you, Linda. Really. You've shown me more kindness tonight than I've experienced in a long time." Linda went to bed but found it hard to sleep. She kept listening for sounds from the living room, half expecting Walter to rob them or something worse. But all she heard was gentle snoring. Eventually, exhaustion won out and she drifted off. When she woke up the next morning, the sun was streaming through her cracked window, and something smelled amazing. She threw on her robe and hurried to the kitchen, stopping dead in her tracks at what she saw. Walter was at her stove, flipping pancakes like he'd been cooking in her kitchen his whole life. Amy was sitting at the table, her eyes wide with wonder, giggling at something Walter had just said. The sight of her daughter, usually so shy around strangers, laughing so freely made Linda's heart squeeze. "Mama," Amy called out when she spotted her. "Mr. Walter is making pancakes, real pancakes." Linda had to blink back tears again. She couldn't remember the last time they'd had pancakes. She could barely afford cereal most days. Walter smiled at Linda from where he stood by the stove. "I hope you don't mind. I found some flour, eggs, and milk. Couldn't help myself." Mind? Linda wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Those ingredients were supposed to last the rest of the week, but seeing Amy's happy face, she couldn't bring herself to care. "Not at all," she managed to say. "Thank you." She sat down next to Amy, who was practically bouncing in her chair with excitement. "He knows magic tricks too, Mama. Show her, Mr. Walter." Walter chuckled as he plated the pancakes and brought them to the table. From his pocket, he pulled out a worn deck of cards. His hands moved with surprising speed for someone his age, shuffling and cutting the deck with practiced ease. "Pick a card, any card," he said to Amy, fanning them out. Amy chose one, looked at it with serious concentration, and showed it to Linda while hiding it from Walter. The 7 of Hearts. Walter had her put it back in the deck, shuffled dramatically, and then pulled a card from behind Amy's ear. The 7 of Hearts. Amy squealed with delight, clapping her hands. Even Linda found herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in weeks. They ate breakfast together, and Walter told them stories about traveling when he was younger. Nothing too specific, Linda noticed, but entertaining enough to keep Amy captivated. After breakfast, Walter insisted on washing the dishes. Linda protested, but he waved her off. You gave me shelter and warmth. The least I can do is clean a few plates. While he worked at the sink, Linda got Amy ready for school. She braided her daughter's hair, packed the small lunch she'd prepared the night before, and made sure she had her homework. All the while, she kept glancing at Walter, this strange man who had appeared in their lives like something out of a fairy tale. When it was time for Amy to leave for school, she surprised them both by hugging Walter. Will you be here when I get home? She asked hopefully. Walter knelt down to her level, his expression kind but honest. I'm afraid not, sweetheart. I need to catch that bus, remember? But I'll never forget your smile. Amy's face fell a little, but she nodded. She was used to disappointment, Linda thought with a pang of sadness. Too used to it. After Amy left for school, Linda had to get ready for her morning shift at the diner. She felt awkward suddenly, alone with Walter in her small apartment. I have to leave for work in about 20 minutes, she said. You're welcome to stay until you need to catch your bus. Just pull the door closed behind you when you go. It locks automatically. Thank you, Linda, Walter said. He was looking around the apartment now, his eyes taking in details she wished he wouldn't notice. The stack of unpaid bills on the counter. The eviction notice stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet. The medicine bottles for Amy's asthma that cost more than Linda wanted to think about. She saw him looking and felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. It's not always this bad, she lied. Just going through a rough patch. Walter didn't say anything, but his eyes were sad. Understanding. Like he knew she was lying but was too polite to call her out on it. Linda grabbed her purse and her jacket. Before she left, Walter stopped her. Linda, could I ask you something? Sure. Could you write down your full name and address for me? I'd like to send you a proper thank you card. You really saved me last night. Linda hesitated. Giving out her address to a stranger seemed foolish. But then again, she'd already let him sleep in her home. What difference did it make now? She found a scrap of paper and wrote down her information, her handwriting shaky from tiredness. Walter took the paper and carefully folded it, putting it in his pocket. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. Please take this, he said, holding it out to her. No, Linda said immediately, backing away. No, I can't. You don't owe me anything. I want to, Walter insisted. Please, for Amy. Buy her something special. Really, I can't. You gave me something priceless last night. Walter said softly. You gave me kindness when you had every reason not to. You reminded me that there's still good in this world. $20 is nothing compared to that, please. Linda's eyes filled with tears again. She seemed to cry so easily these days. Like her emotions were right there at the surface, ready to spill over at any moment. She took the $20 with shaking hands. Thank you, she whispered. Walter smiled. No, thank you. He stepped forward and hugged her, a gentle, grandfatherly hug that made Linda feel safe for just a moment. When he pulled back, he said, Take care of yourself and that beautiful daughter of yours. Linda left for work in a daze, the $20 bill clutched in her hand. As she walked to the bus stop, she thought about what she'd buy for Amy. Maybe some new crayons. Amy loved to draw, but her crayons were down to little stubs. The next 2 weeks passed in their usual blur of work and worry. Linda picked up extra shifts when she could, trying desperately to scrape together the money for rent. She kept Walter's $20 bill in her wallet, unable to bring herself to spend it. It felt important somehow, like a good luck charm. Amy asked about Mr. Walter a few times, wondering if he'd ever come back. Linda told her probably not, that he had his own life to live. But she thought about him too, more often than she'd expected. She wondered where he'd been going that day, where he was now, if he was safe and warm. It was a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks after Walter had stayed with them, when everything changed. Linda had just gotten home from her morning shift and was looking through the mail, most of it bills she couldn't pay. There was one envelope that stood out, though. It was big and fancy, made of thick cream-colored paper. Her name and address were written in elegant handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter, written in the same elegant script, and a check. Linda's eyes went to the check first, and her knees nearly buckled. $50,000. $50,000 made out to Linda Hayes. She sat down hard on the couch, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. With shaking hands, she unfolded the letter. Dear Linda, it began. I have thought about you and Amy every day since that rainy night. Your kindness, offered freely despite having so little yourself, touched my heart in ways I cannot fully express. I know you are struggling. I saw the eviction notice. I saw the medical bills. I saw a mother working herself to the bone to provide for her daughter. Please accept this check as a thank you, and as a way for me to help ease your burdens. You deserve so much more than this world has given you. Use this money to catch up on your bills, to breathe a little easier, to give Amy some of the things you wish you could give her. You are a remarkable person, Linda Hayes. Never forget that. With deepest gratitude, Walter. Linda read the letter 3 times, then 4, then 5. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. This couldn't be real. People didn't just give away $50,000. This had to be some kind of scam or a mistake or a dream. She pulled out her phone and called the bank number printed on the check. Her voice shook as she asked if the check was legitimate. The person on the other end put her on hold for what felt like hours. When they came back, they confirmed it. The check was real. It would clear. Linda dropped the phone and burst into tears. Real ugly crying that came from somewhere deep in her chest. She cried for all the nights she'd laid awake worrying about money. She cried for every time she'd had to tell Amy they couldn't afford something. She cried from relief and disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. When she finally pulled herself together, she looked at the letter again. Walter. Who was this man? She tried to think back to their conversations, looking for clues. He'd been vague about his life, about where he was from. She didn't even know his last name. Linda grabbed her laptop, the old one that took forever to start up and only worked half the time. She typed in Walter and $50,000 gift, but got nothing useful. How could she find him? She had to thank him properly. She had to know why. The next day, still in shock, Linda deposited the check. She kept expecting someone to tell her it was a mistake, that the money wasn't really hers. But the transaction went through smoothly. She paid her back rent immediately, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders that she'd been carrying for months. She paid off the medical bills. She bought groceries, real groceries, filling her cart without checking prices for the first time in years. But she couldn't stop thinking about Walter. She needed to find him. She needed to understand. In a moment of desperation, she called the local news station. She told them her story, about the kind old man who'd stayed one night and then changed her life. She thought maybe if they ran the story, Walter would see it and reach out. The news station loved it. They sent a reporter to interview her that same day. Linda sat on her couch, the same couch Walter had slept on, and told the story of that rainy night. She showed them the letter, though she kept the check amount private. The news segment aired on Friday evening. It was a short piece, just 3 minutes long, but the reporter had done a good job. They called it The Kindness of Strangers, and showed Linda talking about helping Walter that rainy night. They didn't mention the exact amount of money, just said he'd sent a generous gift that had changed her life. The segment ended with Linda looking into the camera and saying, "Walter, if you're watching this, thank you. And please let me know you're okay." Linda didn't expect much to come from it. Maybe Walter would see it and call the station. Maybe he wouldn't, at least she'd tried. She made dinner for Amy, helped her with homework, and got her ready for bed. It was a normal Friday night, except for the feeling of hope sitting in Linda's chest, fragile as a soap bubble. Saturday morning, Linda woke up to her phone ringing. And ringing. And ringing. By the time she stumbled out of bed, she had 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages. Her email inbox was overflowing. Her hands shook as she tried to understand what was happening. The news segment had been picked up by a national network. It was everywhere. On their website, on social media, being shared thousands of times. Linda's face was on her screen over and over again. And the comments, oh God, there were so many comments. Most were supportive, people saying how touching the story was. But some were mean, accusing her of making it up or trying to scam people for money. Linda felt sick. This wasn't what she'd wanted. She just wanted to find Walter to thank him. Now the whole country was watching her. Her phone rang again. A number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Is this Linda Hayes?" A woman's voice, professional and crisp. "Yes, this is Linda. Ms. Hayes, my name is Patricia Chen. I'm a journalist with the National Tribune. I'd like to talk to you about Walter." Linda's heart jumped. "Do you know him? Do you know where he is?" There was a pause on the other end. "Ms. Hayes, I think you should sit down." Linda sat on the edge of her bed, Amy still sleeping peacefully in the next room. "What is it? Is Walter okay?" "Walter is fine," Patricia said. "But I need to ask you something first. The man who stayed with you, did he give you a last name?" "No, just Walter." "Can you describe him to me?" Linda did, giving as many details as she could remember. The silver hair, the kind eyes, the way his hands had moved when he did card tricks for Amy. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Ms. Hayes, I believe the man who stayed with you was Walter Fairchild." The name meant nothing to Linda. "Okay. You don't know who Walter Fairchild is?" "No, should I?" Patricia made a sound that might have been a laugh or a gasp. "Ms. Hayes, Walter Fairchild is one of the richest men in America. He sold his technology company 3 months ago for over $2 billion. Linda's brain stopped working. She heard the words, but they didn't make sense. $2 billion. Billion with a B, that was movie star money. That was beyond anything she could imagine. "That can't be right," Linda said. "The Walter I met was just a regular old man. He was sitting in the rain, he needed help." "Mr. Fairchild is known for doing this," Patricia interrupted. "He travels around the country, often disguised or without identifying himself. He wants to see how real people live, how they treat strangers. It's his way of deciding where to donate his money." Linda felt like the room was spinning. "You're saying that Walter, the man who slept on my couch and made pancakes for my daughter, is a billionaire?" "Yes, and Ms. Hayes, your story has gone viral. Everyone wants to know about the single mother who helped a billionaire without knowing who he was. Can I ask, how much did he give you?" Linda's protective instincts kicked in. "I don't think that's anyone's business." "Of course I understand. But Ms. Hayes, based on Mr. Fairchild's history, $50,000 would be very modest for him. He usually gives much more when someone truly touches his heart." Linda's mind was reeling. She thanked Patricia and hung up, then immediately started searching online for Walter Fairchild. And there he was. Dozens of articles, hundreds of photos. Her Walter in expensive suits, shaking hands with presidents and CEOs. Walter at charity events. Walter accepting awards. Walter announcing his company's sale for an amount of money Linda couldn't even comprehend. She read everything she could find. Walter Fairchild was 73 years old. He'd started his tech company in his garage 40 years ago and built it into a giant. He was known for being private, almost reclusive. His wife had died 5 years ago from cancer. They'd never had children. He donated millions to charity every year but rarely appeared in public, and he'd sat at her kitchen table. He'd slept on her worn-out couch. He'd made pancakes for Amy with her cheap flour and her dollar store syrup. Linda's phone rang again. And again. And again. Reporters, all of them wanting interviews. Wanting her story. Wanting pictures. She stopped answering. She felt violated somehow, like her private moment of kindness had been turned into a circus. She kept Amy home from school on Monday. There were news vans outside their apartment building. Reporters camped on the sidewalk. Neighbors were being interviewed. Mrs. Chen from next door was on TV, talking about what a good person Linda was. Linda watched it all from her window, feeling like she was trapped. By Tuesday, it was worse. The story was everywhere. Social media had exploded with it. People were calling her a hero. People were calling her a fake. People were analyzing every word of the news interview, looking for hidden meanings. Someone had found her Facebook page and was sharing her photos. Amy's photos. That was the last straw. Linda made her Facebook private and stopped looking at social media entirely. She just wanted everything to go back to normal. She wanted to go to work, pick up Amy from school, make dinner. She wanted her quiet, invisible life back. But Wednesday brought something unexpected. A courier arrived at her door, managing to get past the reporters somehow. He had an envelope for her. Inside was a simple note. "Linda, I'm sorry for the chaos. That was never my intention. Please come meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. The address is below. Come alone or bring Amy. Whatever makes you comfortable. Walter." The address was for a coffee shop on the other side of town, a quiet little place Linda had never been to but had passed a few times. She stared at the note for hours, reading it over and over. Walter wanted to meet her. Walter, the billionaire. Walter, who had changed her life with a single check. She called Mrs. Chen and asked if she could watch Amy the next day. She didn't tell her why. She couldn't explain it, didn't want to. Thursday afternoon, Linda took 2 buses to get to the coffee shop. Wearing the nicest outfit she owned, a pair of black pants and a blue blouse that Amy said made her look pretty. Her heart was pounding as she pushed open the door to the coffee shop. It was small and cozy, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. There were only a few people inside, and at first she didn't see Walter. Then a man in the corner booth stood up and waved. It was him, but different somehow. He was wearing regular clothes, jeans and a sweater, but he carried himself differently now that she knew who he was. "Linda," he said warmly, coming to meet her. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." She sat across from him, her hands clasped tight in her lap. She didn't know what to say. All the questions she'd had, all the things she'd wanted to tell him, they all jumbled together in her head. Walter ordered them coffee and waited until the waitress left before speaking. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I never meant for any of this to become public. I should have known better." "You lied to me," Linda said quietly. "It wasn't an accusation, just a fact." "I didn't lie," Walter said gently. "I just didn't tell you everything. My name is Walter. I did miss my bus, though I'll admit that was intentional. Everything else, our conversation, your kindness, that was all real." "Why?" Linda asked. "Why pretend to be someone you're not?" Walter was quiet for a moment, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "Because I wanted the truth," he finally said. "Do you know what it's like, Linda, to be very wealthy? People treat you differently. They want things from you. They're kind because they hope to get something in return. I never know if someone likes me for who I am or for what I can give them." Linda thought about that. She'd never had to worry about people wanting her money. She'd never had money for anyone to want. "After my wife died," Walter continued, "I felt very alone. I have all this money, all this success, and no one to share it with. So I started traveling. I wanted to see how people really lived. I wanted to know if genuine kindness still existed in the world, the kind that expects nothing in return. And you found it with me," Linda said softly, starting to understand. Walter nodded, his eyes bright with emotion. "You had $12 in your wallet, Linda. I saw it when you paid Mrs. Chen. $12 until payday. You were behind on rent, struggling to afford your daughter's medicine. And still you took in a stranger. You gave me your food, your warmth, your home. You gave me something money can't buy." Linda felt tears starting again. She seemed to cry so much lately. Anyone would have done the same thing. "No," Walter said firmly. "They wouldn't have. I've been doing this for 2 years now, traveling to different cities, putting myself in situations where I need help. Do you know how many people have walked past me? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Some told me to go to a shelter. Some offered to call the police. Most just pretended they didn't see me at all. You're only the 3rd person who's invited me into their home." "What happened with the other 2? Linda asked. Walter smiled sadly. "One was a young couple in Seattle. They helped me, but I could tell they were uncomfortable. They kept their valuables locked up, watched me carefully. They were kind but wary. The other was an elderly woman in Texas. She was wonderful, reminded me of my wife. I helped her set up a trust fund for her grandchildren before she passed away last year. And now me," Linda said. "And now you," Walter agreed. "You who had every reason to say no, to protect yourself and your daughter. But you didn't. You saw someone in need and you helped. That rainy night, sitting in your kitchen, listening to you talk about your struggles, I was reminded why I made my money in the first place. Not to hoard it, not to buy things I don't need, but to help people like you. Good people who deserve a break." Linda wiped at her eyes. "The $50,000, it's already changed my life. I paid off everything I owed. Amy and I have food in the refrigerator. I can sleep at night without worrying about eviction." "You've given me more than you know." Walter reached across the table and took her hand. His skin was warm, papery with age. "Linda, that $50,000 was just the beginning." Linda's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've been thinking about you and Amy constantly these past 2 weeks. I did some research. I know Amy has asthma, that her medications are expensive. I know you work 2 jobs and barely see her. I know you're doing your best, but you shouldn't have to struggle this hard. Walter, you've already done so much. Please let me finish," Walter said gently. "I don't have children of my own. My wife and I tried for years, but it wasn't meant to be. When I met Amy, saw her smile, heard her laugh, something in my heart woke up. She reminded me of what matters. And you, Linda? You reminded me that there are still heroes in this world. Regular, everyday heroes who don't expect recognition or reward. Linda didn't know what to say. She just squeezed his hand and waited. I've set up an education trust for Amy, Walter continued. It will cover everything. Private school if you want it, though I hear the public school in the Riverside district is excellent. College, graduate school, whatever she wants to pursue. She'll never have to worry about student loans or choosing a career based on money instead of passion. Linda's breath caught in her throat. Walter, I can't accept. There's more, Walter said. I know you've been renting that apartment. I bought the building. You what? I bought the building. It was easy. The owner was looking to sell anyway. I'm transferring the deed for your apartment to your name. It's yours, Linda. Free and clear. No more rent, no more landlords. Just a home for you and Amy. Linda couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The coffee shop seemed to tilt around her. This is too much. This is way too much. I don't deserve. You deserve everything, Walter said intensely. And there's one more thing. If you're willing. Linda laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. One more thing? How could there possibly be more? Walter smiled. I'm starting a new foundation. It's going to be dedicated to helping single parents, people who are working hard but can't seem to get ahead. I need someone to run it. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle. Someone who has compassion and integrity. I need you, Linda. Me? Linda's voice came out as a squeak. I don't know anything about running a foundation. I'm a waitress. You're so much more than that, Walter said. You're a mother, a survivor, a good person. Those are the qualifications that matter. I'll hire people to teach you the business side. I'll hire accountants and lawyers and advisors. But I need someone at the top who has heart. Someone who will use this money to truly help people, not just hand out checks and feel good about themselves. Walter, Linda couldn't finish the sentence. It was too big, too overwhelming, too impossible. The salary is $200,000 a year, Walter added, plus benefits, full health insurance for you and Amy, dental, vision, a retirement plan. You'd work normal hours 9 to 5 so you could actually spend time with your daughter. Watch her grow up. $200,000. Linda couldn't even imagine that much money. She made barely $30,000 a year working 2 jobs. $200,000 was rich people money. It was security and stability and everything she'd dreamed about but never thought possible. Why? She whispered. Why me? You could hire anyone. Someone qualified, someone with experience. Because when I told you I'd missed my bus, you believed me. When I was cold and wet and alone, you saw me as a person, not a problem. You made me pancakes, Linda. With the last of your food, you made me breakfast. That's who I want running my foundation. Someone who gives even when they have nothing left to give. Linda looked down at their joined hands. Walter's age spotted and wrinkled, hers rough from work and washing dishes. 2 different worlds, connected by one rainy night and an act of simple kindness. I need to think about it, Linda said finally. This is all so much, too much. I need to make sure it's real, that I'm not dreaming. Take all the time you need, Walter said. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be in town for another week, staying at the Riverside Hotel. Here's my direct number. He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. Call me when you're ready, or if you have questions, or if you just need to talk. Linda took the card with shaking hands. Walter Fairchild, it said in simple black letters. Below that, a phone number and email address. No fancy titles or company names, just a name and a way to reach him. They finished their coffee and talked about lighter things. Walter asked about Amy, about her school, her interests. Linda found herself relaxing, remembering this was the same man who'd sat at her kitchen table and made her daughter laugh. Billionaire or not, he was still just Walter. When they finally stood to leave, Walter hugged her again. Thank you, Linda, for everything. You gave me hope that night. I hope I can give you the same. Linda watched him walk away, disappearing into the afternoon crowd. She stood there for a long time, holding his business card, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. She took the bus home in a daze. The reporters were still outside her building, but they felt less important now. She pushed through them without answering questions and locked her door behind her. Mrs. Chen brought Amy home a few minutes later. "Mama." Amy ran to her, wrapping her small arms around Linda's waist. "Mrs. Chen let me help make dumplings. Can we make dumplings tomorrow?" "Sure, baby," Linda said, hugging her daughter tight. "We can make whatever you want." That night, after Amy was asleep, Linda sat at her kitchen table and looked at the business card. She thought about everything Walter had offered: the money for Amy's education, the apartment, the job. It was everything she'd ever wanted and more than she'd ever dreamed possible. But was it real? Could she trust it? She pulled out her laptop and researched Walter Fairchild some more. She read articles about his charitable work, about the millions he'd given away over the years. She read interviews where he talked about wanting to make a real difference, about looking for authentic people to help him distribute his wealth. She read about his late wife, Catherine, who had been a social worker before she got sick, who had dedicated her life to helping others. And slowly, Linda started to believe. This wasn't a scam or a trick. This was real. Walter was real. And he was offering her a chance to change not just her own life, but the lives of countless other people struggling just like she had been. Linda didn't sleep much that night. Her mind kept spinning with possibilities and fears. What if she failed? What if she took the job and messed everything up? She was just a waitress from a small apartment. Who was she to run a foundation with? Millions of dollars? But then she thought about all the times she'd been scared before. Scared when Amy's father left. Scared when she had to work 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Scared every time Amy got sick, and she had to choose between medication and groceries. She'd been scared so many times, and she'd survived. She'd done more than survive. She'd kept her daughter safe and happy and loved. Maybe that was exactly what Walter needed. Someone who knew what it was like to be afraid. Someone who understood what struggling families really needed, not what rich donors thought they needed. By the time the sun came up, Linda had made her decision. She called Walter at 8 in the morning, her hands shaking as she dialed the number on his card. He answered on the second ring. "Walter? It's Linda. If the offer is still open, I accept." There was a pause, then she heard what sounded like a relieved laugh. "Linda, I'm so glad, so very glad. Can we meet today? There's a lot to discuss." They met at his hotel, in a private conference room he'd reserved. This time there were other people there. A lawyer, an accountant, and a woman Walter introduced as Margaret, who would be training Linda on foundation management. The next few hours were overwhelming. They talked about salary and benefits and logistics. They talked about the foundation's mission and goals. They showed Linda the office space Walter had already rented, a beautiful suite of rooms in downtown with windows overlooking the park. They walked her through budgets and grant applications and fundraising strategies. Linda's head was spinning, but Margaret seemed to sense her anxiety. "Don't worry," the older woman said kindly. "You'll learn everything step by step. Nobody expects you to know it all on day one." "What if I mess up?" Linda asked quietly. Walter, who had been listening from across the table, spoke up. "Then you'll fix it. Linda, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for heart. I've worked with plenty of experienced nonprofit directors. Some were excellent. Some were more concerned with looking good than doing good. You care about people. That's more valuable than any amount of experience." They arranged for Linda to start in 2 weeks. That would give her time to quit her jobs at the diner and the grocery store, to get Amy settled with the idea of their new life, to wrap her mind around everything that was changing. When Linda finally left the hotel that afternoon, she had a folder full of documents, a company credit card in her name, and a feeling in her chest she barely recognized. Hope. Real solid hope for the future. The next morning, Linda gave notice at both her jobs. Her managers were surprised but supportive, especially when she told them she'd been offered a position at a new nonprofit. She didn't mention Walter or the money or any of the crazy details. She just said she was moving on to something better. The hardest part was telling Amy, "How do you explain to a 7-year-old that your entire life is about to change?" Linda sat her down after school one day and tried her best. "Remember Mr. Walter? The nice man who stayed with us?" Amy's face lit up. "The one who did magic tricks." "Yes, him. Well, it turns out Mr. Walter has a very important job, and he wants Mommy to help him with it. What kind of job? He's going to help people who don't have very much money, people like us, and he wants me to be in charge of deciding how to help them. Amy thought about this seriously. Like how we helped Mr. Walter. Exactly like that. That's a good job, Mommy. Linda hugged her daughter tight. I think so too, baby. The next 2 weeks flew by in a blur of preparation. The deed to her apartment came through and Linda cried when she held the paper that said the home was officially hers. She wouldn't have believed it if she couldn't touch the document, see her name printed in legal type. Margaret came by several times to help Linda prepare for her new role. They went through case studies of successful nonprofits and unsuccessful ones. They talked about what made people trust a charity, what made them want to donate. Margaret taught her about transparency and accountability, about making sure every dollar was spent wisely. The most important thing, Margaret said during one of their sessions, is to never forget why you're doing this. It's not about the paperwork or the meetings or the reports. It's about people, real people with real struggles. The moment you forget that, you've lost. Linda understood that in her bones. She'd been that person with real struggles. She still was in many ways, even with Walter's help. The fear of poverty didn't leave you quickly. The habit of checking price tags, of stretching every dollar, of worrying about money. Those things were part of her now. Her first day at the new job was terrifying. Linda put on the new clothes she'd bought, professional pants and blazers that felt strange after years of diner uniforms. She dropped Amy off at school, kissed her goodbye, and took the bus downtown to her new office. The space was beautiful, bright and open with a small staff of 4 people Walter had already hired. There was Jennifer, who handled finances, Marcus, who managed grant applications, Deshawn, who worked on community outreach, and Rachel, who handled administrative tasks. They all greeted Linda warmly, without a hint of judgment about her lack of experience. We're all new to this, Jennifer told her over coffee that first morning. Walter hired each of us because of our passion, not just our resumes. We're going to figure this out together. Walter came by that afternoon to see how Linda was settling in. He brought flowers for her desk and a stuffed bear for Amy. How's it going? He asked. I'm overwhelmed, Linda admitted, but good overwhelmed if that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Walter smiled. You're going to do amazing things here, Linda. I believe that with everything in me. The first few months were a learning curve. Linda made mistakes, lots of them. She approved a grant that turned out to be for a fraudulent organization. She struggled with the technology systems. She accidentally sent an email to the wrong person. But each time she messed up, her team helped her fix it. And slowly, she started to get the hang of things. The foundation's mission was clear: help single parents get back on their feet. They provided emergency funds for rent and utilities. They offered childcare assistance so parents could work or go to school. They connected people with job training programs and education resources. Every day, Linda reviewed applications from people who reminded her of herself just months ago. Desperate people, working people, people who just needed one break to change their lives. Linda made it her mission to read every single application personally. Margaret told her that wasn't sustainable, that once they scaled up, she'd need to delegate. But for now, Linda wanted to see every face, read every story. These weren't just numbers on a page. They were real people with real children depending on them. 6 months into the job, the foundation held its first major fundraising event. Linda was nervous about speaking in public, about asking rich people for money. But Walter encouraged her to tell her story, to be honest about where she'd come from. She stood at the podium in a ballroom full of donors and spoke from her heart. She told them about working 2 jobs and still not having enough, about the fear of eviction, of not being able to afford medicine for her daughter, about the night she met Walter and how one act of kindness had changed everything. I know what it's like to need help, she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. And I know how much it means when someone offers it without judgment. That's what this foundation does. We don't judge, we don't lecture, we just help, because everyone deserves a chance. The speech raised over $3 million that night. People came up to Linda afterwards with tears in their eyes, saying they'd never thought about poverty that way before. Several successful business people who had come from nothing shared their own stories with her, thanking her for reminding them where they'd come from. Walter found her at the end of the night, standing by the windows and looking out at the city lights. "You were magnificent," he said. "I was scared to death," Linda admitted. "The best speeches come from fear," Walter said. "From vulnerability. You showed them your heart tonight. That's what made the difference." As the first year came to a close, the foundation had helped over 500 families, 500 parents who had been where Linda was, struggling to keep their heads above water. Some they'd helped with rent, some with childcare, some with job training or education. Each story was different, but they all had one thing in common: people who were working hard but needed a hand up. Linda thought often about that rainy night when she'd met Walter, how close she'd come to just walking past him, to minding her own business and going home. If she had, none of this would exist. Amy would still be struggling with asthma in a rundown apartment. Linda would still be working double shifts and living in fear of eviction. One day Amy came to visit the office after school. She was 8 now, getting taller and losing more of her baby teeth. She walked around the office with pride, telling everyone, "That's my mom," when she pointed at Linda. Walter happened to be there that day, and Amy ran to him with a squeal. "Mr. Walter." He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. When he set her down, Amy looked up at him with serious eyes. "Thank you for helping my mom," she said. "She's happy now. She wasn't always happy before." Walter's eyes got shiny. "Your mom helped me first, sweetheart. I'll never forget that." That night, after Linda tucked Amy into bed in their apartment that they owned, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, the same table where she'd sat with Walter that first morning. She thought about how much had changed, how one decision, one moment of compassion had rippled out to affect hundreds of lives. She pulled out her phone and texted Walter. "Thank you for believing in me." His response came quickly. "Thank you for reminding me what matters." Linda smiled and looked around her small kitchen. It wasn't fancy. The cabinets were still old. The floor still had that stain that wouldn't come out. But it was hers. And more importantly, it was filled with hope. The foundation continued to grow. By the end of the second year, they'd helped over 1,000 families. Linda hired more staff, opened a second office in a different part of the city. She spoke at conferences and events, always telling her story, always reminding people that poverty didn't mean lazy or unmotivated. It just meant needing a chance. Walter remained involved, but he let Linda run things her way. He trusted her judgment, respected her decisions. They had lunch together once a month, sometimes talking about the foundation, sometimes just talking about life. He became like a father to her and a grandfather to Amy. He came to Amy's school plays and birthday parties. He taught her more magic tricks and told her stories about her mom's kindness. Years passed. Amy grew up in stability and security, knowing her mom would always be there when she got home from school. She never had to worry about money or moving or whether they could afford her medicine. She grew up watching her mother help other people, learning that success meant lifting others up. When Amy graduated high school, both Linda and Walter were in the audience, cheering louder than anyone. Amy was headed to college on a full scholarship, planning to study social work. "I want to help people like Mom does," she'd said when choosing her major. That night at the graduation party, Walter pulled Linda aside. He looked older now, his hair completely white, his movements slower, but his eyes were still kind, still sharp. "I want you to know something," he said. "That night when you invited me in, I wasn't just testing you. I was testing myself too. Testing whether I still believed in goodness, in humanity. I'd lost my faith in people. You gave it back to me." Linda hugged him, this man who had changed her life, who she'd changed right back. "We saved each other," she said simply. And it was true. A struggling single mom and a lonely billionaire, brought together by rain and kindness and the simple human need for connection. They'd both been lost that night, and somehow they'd found their way home.